So, customary to the show, we know that we have to kind of cover anything that might have been left behind, anything that was botched, maybe some unclear statements. And so, what we're going to do right now is we're going to look at some of the things that came up last time around. For example, as you may have remembered, there were two specific statements that we looked at the very top. Actually made a mistake. Said here, if you option click the track header, associated channel strip continues to select the track and all associated regions. Now this only pertains to those of you that are working without select region on track selection and without select track on region marquee selection. This is a very, very big part of the program that, if overlooked, can greatly affect the quality of your workflow. And so, the Logic Sensei Eddie Gray is here to help you out with just that. And so let's look at this. Without having those be enabled, when I click on a track, I'm not necessarily selecting the regions, am I? Right? See, selecting track 1, regions aren't selected. I can select the region as opposed to the track, and that there's benefits to this workflow. I don't want to get into this now, but there are benefits to this. But what if you want both of the workflows? You still want to separately select the track from the region. Well, if you hold option, you get that very opportunity. Now, if I do that and I hold shift, I can select an extra track, an additional track. But if I want to select the regions, then I would have to hold shift and option to select both the tracks and the regions. So that was a distinction that I was able to make yesterday. Again, with the benefit of hindsight, sometimes you kind of look at it a little bit differently. A lot of info coming at me during these things. Again, these are not rehearsed from the very beginning. Through all the ups and the downs, we made sure that we didn't want to rehearse. We prepare the best we can, and yet, look, it's 1,200 pages or so. So we have to kind of meet somewhere in the middle. Okay, so that has been checked off. Let's go ahead and delete that. The next thing that came up, which still hasn't been cleared, and I think is a bug, to be honest, is inside of the preferences and the general icon inside of the catch tab here. You can see that the definition, if you will, works like this: the defaults for newly opened views. So, as I understood it, if I create a new view, meaning a new screen set, and this is from Edgar Rothermick's books, I just want to be clear, it describes it as such. So it says here, you set the default catch playhead mode by disabling the 3 checkboxes. This will be the default for all newly opened windows. All right. So I tried that inside of my session. So you can see that inside of catch, I have, why don't we just do the first and the third, just for fun. Okay, so when I start playback, catch will turn on, and then whatever this is, which I still can't sort out because I've looked at the definition and it says it's supposed to do something, but it's not doing it. But again, this could just be my software. But let's check this out. Theoretically, based on the defaults for newly opened views, we should only see this behavior, the 1 and the 3 enabled on newly opened views. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the piano roll. You can see that when I control click, it has the 1 and the 3. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up, let's see, the audio editor. Let's control click here. We see it on the 1 and the 3. So let's see if this changes. Let's see if that happens there. Okay, so now it's just the 1 and the 2. So let's go ahead and open up the piano roll again. No, still the 1 and the 3. So I don't know. Let's say we open up the editor now and let's control click. No, it's just the 1 and the 3. So I'm just trying to figure out what determines the behavior. If I hit command 4, let's say, which is the piano roll, now I'm seeing the 1 and the 2. Now remember, I enabled the 1 and the first option and the second option. So now this seems to ring true. Every single time I open up a new view, this is adhering to the laws. Let's do command, let's see, I think I have this set to not the score editor, not smart controls. I guess I'll open up another window. So let's see where's the other window? Command 1. I don't see it on my system. Why not? There it is right there. Okay, so let's see. Go into the piano roll inside here. Control click under catch. Let's see, I might have to extend my screen to hold on, to be able to look at this appropriately. All right, control click 1 and 2. All right, so then that has been cleared up as well. Every single time you open up a new view inside of the preferences, you are determining that catch behavior by enabling options inside here. The one thing still working on, still trying to figure out exactly what it does. And I'll give you my thoughts, my reasoning here. Inside of catch, you have this third option. It says basically you catch content by the position if catch and link are enabled. So catch is the behavior where when the playhead is outside of the screen's boundaries, it basically updates to show you kind of what's happening in its current state. So as of now, when this playhead moves away from the screen and now onto other things, we're still looking here, right? It's not until I hit catch that this updates and shows me the current data that is kind of being played over, or that is kind of under the playhead at the moment, right? And so that's fine. But when we look at this tab here, it says catch the content if catch and link are enabled. So link is almost a different part of the program that allows us to look at content that we're trying to look at. For example, if I click on this track here and I have link on, we're looking at the information that's on this region. If I disable link and I click on the audio region, we're still looking at that region simply because we have it's selected. But what if I wanted to now look at the information here? You see how I'm selecting this one and yet we're still looking at the information here. How am I sure? Well, playhead's a bar 1, playhead's a bar 1 here. So this is the content that we find here. So if I then click on this, now we know we're looking at this information. So basically, it's not updating, right? The information inside of this particular window is not updating. Same goes for the audio track editor if we utilize that methodology. But that's kind of the basis that we're working with there. But yeah, when I enable this and we enable that, it's supposed to catch the content by the position. I'm assuming they mean the playhead, if catch and link are both enabled. And so when I go back to Edgar Rothermic's work here, let's see here. Does he go over it? The individual catch play settings on the window. Remember what the screen sets. We know that. This is something that I'm still, gonna have to play with because it hasn't been entirely determined how it works. See, because I thought, all right, well, based on what it's saying, if the playhead moves over to this region, it surely is going to show me that information. That's what it kind of sounds like to me. But that's not really what happens. See, if I press play, the only region I'm looking at is this one. It's not going to be updated. Here, I'll show you. So it's not until I click on the region, now I can see it. So if you guys have any more information on this, you can clarify it for the community. That would be amazing. I understand the first option makes complete sense. Every single time I start playback, the catch is going to turn on. Wait, oh yeah, it's disabled. So right now it's enabled, right? You see it right there? Okay, so when I start playback, what happened? Catch when starting playback. So why isn't it doing it? Oh, okay, got it. when this specific region starts playback. See, I thought it just meant playback in general, but when it starts to read the information, so it's not going to turn on until it actually reads that information. Check it out. Oh, wait, now it's decided to turn on there. Okay, so maybe it is just when starting playback. Okay. Okay, so that makes sense. This one is every single time I move the playhead. So if I ever go into some kind of editing mode, I make a decision, I move the playhead. It seems like it takes a second sometimes to turn on, but there it is right there. You can see it's turning on. Let me turn it off. I'll move the playhead. You can see that that's updating. Okay. Again, the last one is just how do I catch content by position if catch and link are enabled. Haven't been able to find it. Keep us posted, and we will now carry on. That's just kind of wanted to update the current status of things. It is something that I will continue to look into. But for now, we're looking at audio preferences inside of the user guide, page 1002. If you have any questions, hit me up in the comments. Happy to answer. And let's do it. Let's do it officially. Here we go. Logic Pro automatically recognizes any installed core audio hardware and uses the default settings as defined in Audio MIDI Setup utility. However, you may want to optimize the settings for your individual hardware setup, particularly if you use several audio interfaces or a multiple input-output device. All right, so now we're going to get into some more details. A couple of things that we should understand. Core audio is kind of the engine that runs Logic, and so we should be aware of that. Where we find that is inside. Let me switch my screens here. Oh, hold on. Okay. Where we find that is inside of our preferences under the audio tab, devices. You guys see where it says core audio. So it needs to be enabled. Why would you ever disable it if you're having troubleshooting issues? This is actually quite a lifesaver. So you might want to check out my video on what to do if Logic is not working, the top 10 tips. And I have some other videos as well on troubleshooting. So that is core audio. What else are they referring to? It uses settings as defined by the Audio MIDI Setup. And if you want to find this, this is under Applications, Utilities, Audio MIDI Setup. Of course, all of us know we can also just type in Audio MIDI Setup, and it's right there. Okay. All right, so now we're moving to the audio icon. I can't believe we spent just one session on general. That's amazing. I really thought this was going to be just like one read through. Yeah, right. You know what they say? It always takes twice as long. All right, so output device pop-up menu. Probably the setting, the two settings you'll change the most when it comes to your workflow. Of course, the buffer size, right? Dealing with latency, and then your input and output devices. Something that you're going to want to be on top of. I'd say it's the two things you change the most. So the output device, this, it's like, where is the sound playing to, right? I understand where it's coming from. If you have an interface, so that would be your input, obviously. But where is it going? In my case, it's going to universal audio because I have that connected to my speakers, and that's where the sound is outputting from. Let's say you're using Zoom, you're on a webinar, you're sharing some music sessions, you're collaborating, whatever the case may be. Zoom audio device would be the output. That's where it's playing out of. So it always depends on where it's going. The input, in my case, I have this interface, right? This is where I connect my guitar. This is where I connect my microphones. And so this is kind of the input and the output. Right? It's how we connect everything. We get everything to talk. So please be clear about those. If you're not recording guitar, if you're not recording vocals, if you're not using a microphone, please turn it off, right? You want to make sure you take care of your ears, and it'll save you some CPU resources. Okay, when setting an output device that also provides inputs, the input device pop-up menu changes accordingly. If choosing a different input device, you'll be advised to use a common word clock for both audio devices in order to ensure the best sound quality. I/O buffer size pop-up menu. We talked about the buffer size, how your computer is processing all of the audio, plugins, all that good stuff. The smaller the buffer size, the less latency or delay, dare I say. Latency has much more to do than just delay, but it certainly is a big part of it. So you want to make sure that you learn how to deal with this. You're going to need a way to cope and to work through it. Latency is one option. There's several other tools. If you need some more information on this, you can check out my course, How to Optimize Your Workflow and Desktop and Laptop CPU Resources. And this is inside of Udemy, over 4,500 downloads to date. You can also reach out to my team and they can send you the course, support at hfmusicacademy.com. If you're tired of having breakdowns, if you're tired of not experiencing your best self when it comes to your DAW workflow, you know that there's something better, a better system that can help you out. Believe me, we've provided it. Thousands of people all across the world. It's a great course. Provided it for free a couple years ago and took off like nobody's business. It's just amazing to see how many people have taken it on, and it's always good to see. So anyway, check that out. So yeah, the smaller the buffer size, the less latency or delay while recording or you're using software instruments. Because remember, latency is not just going to affect your audio performance, but it's also going to affect your performance within software instruments, MIDI, etc. All right, couple points to note. As the value is reduced, just going to let you guys know, a higher strain is placed on your computer's processor. So the best of both worlds would be to have a strong enough computer that can kind of stay somewhere in the middle, right? It's not working too hard, or it's not just hanging out in the sidelines. It's processing the material and you're not hearing any latency. That would be the ideal case, somewhere like 512, 256 inside of your buffer settings. That's not always going to happen. I always keep it at 1024. I find my system works really well. If it ever, bear in mind, I also am really big on bouncing tracks to audio. I'm also really big on freezing when that comes into play. And so if you want to avoid a lot of that activity altogether, that's one way to do it. I have my system set up. I follow my system and my curriculums and my protocols. And so this thing is working really well and has been for the last couple of years. There may be a point where the selected buffer size is too small, in which case we're not going to hear latency anymore. We're not going to hear delay. We're going to hear a different kind of latency. And this usually takes the form of clicks, pops, and crackles. See, that's something that a lot of people don't know. When they refer to latency, they're just referring to the delay. But simply put, there are different kinds of latency. Plug-in latency, buffer size, different things that come into play that affect the overall performance of the computer. You should aim for the lowest possible buffer size that doesn't introduce clicks, pops, and crackles in your audio. If you find that a higher buffer size setting provides suitable low latency during recording and software instrument playback, you should use it. This minimizes the impact on your computer's processors. So yeah, you want to make sure that that you play with this. It's never just going to be set to one thing. You're going to have to change it. I'm letting you know right now. You might as well get used to it. Low when recording, high when mixing. Just remember that phrase, and that should get you there. Low when recording, high or higher when mixing. All right, once you do make a decision, once you are firm on what you want to do, then you need to hit apply. You can see it's dimmed out on my system. Why? Because I haven't made any changes. So if I wanted to move to 512, I could. I'm not going to, but if I did, then you would see that highlighted and ready to go. Okay, something that is directly related to the buffer size that not a lot of people talk about. Right? You hear everybody make videos on latency and what should I do? Go to the buffer size. Very common. But really, the truth is not a lot of people talk about recording delay. And it's very, very much related. And let's find out how we can utilize this to optimize our system. This delays the recording of audio by a certain fixed value, helping you to compensate for any delays that are caused by the audio driver. There will be times where recording's off a little bit, right? You can see it's a little bit late. Now, most of us would just fix that in post, right? We just move it over, perhaps use flex time. It's up to you. That's how I like to do it. I'm accustomed to doing it that way, though. I wasn't trained to do it the other way. This is something I had to learn on my own. Luckily, I found the work of Edgar Rothermick. Luckily, I trained under David Namani, some of the other great logic minds. And so here we are. Just depends on how you want to do it. It is an option. And that's what we want as logic users. Options. We want to make sure that we have the ability to switch it up, change it up at any point and any given time. We want to make sure we can change our course, that we have power over the path. And if we need to make a change, we make it then and there. Okay, now it does give you a heads up. Hey, you're probably not going to touch this. Just letting you know. But I'm letting you know that if you need it, it's there. All right, probably not a bad idea to take a screenshot of your setting just to make sure you don't botch it. But for me, this seems to work. I rarely ever touch it. Okay, let's keep going. Processing threads. Choose the maximum number of processing threads used, or have the number of threads set automatically. Right? Automatic is the default. And usually it's recommended except when you use other CPU intensive applications. So if you find yourself using other apps, Melodyne, I don't know, a third-party sampler, third-party external editor, then you might want to use the manual setup. So automatic is the default setting and it's recommended, except, so if you're doing anything else other than just using Logic, you're probably going to have to set this up manually. For me, this seems to work out just fine. In fact, in that course that I mentioned earlier, I actually run an exercise where I switch this in real time, real example, and it actually works like butter. It's really nice. So check that out. Support at hfmusicacademy.com. All right, process buffer range determines the size of the buffer used to compute mixes and effects. You can choose small, medium, large. You're probably going to want this to be large, just to be clear. It will affect latency as I understand it as well, but I do believe large is the best setting. And then if you need some help with latency, you would just go kind of smaller and smaller. Multi-threading determines whether multi-threading is set for playback tracks only or for playback and live. I wish there was more information here, like what exactly that means. So the way that the Mac is processing the audio is using this multi-threading tech. Now, when it does, is it affecting just software instrument tracks? And does that equate to playback? Does that mean just playback? Or does playback and live mean software instrument and audio? I'm not sure. Something that I should probably look up in one of Edgar Rothermick's books. In fact, I'll take a picture of that and I'll remind myself to do that. But for the most part, if you're on playback, it should work out nicely. And then we will fact check this to see if playback and live means audio or just when you're recording with live tracks. I would assume it means actually live tracks, not tracks that have already been recorded. So I have an audio track here. I don't think it's referring to this. This is not a live track. This is just an audio track. But let's say we were recording a drummer, right? You have 14 mics or 12 mics, right? You want to make sure that the computer is multi-threading and it's working the way it needs to as it's recording live. But again, we will fact check. All right, multi-threading summing determines whether Logic's audio engine uses double precision or standard precision when summing audio. Obviously, we should use 64-bit, right? If it's better definition, if it's more precise, then yes, please. All right, let's move on to general. So that's the next tab over. Right, we're right here. So we're in the audio icon, general tab. Okay, who's the first to show up to the party? Display audio engine. When selected, this is going to display an alert message in an overload situation. Otherwise, playback simply stops without displaying an alert. Personally, I want to leave this on. I want to know that I'm having some buffering issues, that I need to turn a couple things off, that I need to bounce a couple of tracks. I don't want this to be automatic, right? I want to be in the now, in the know. Sample accurate this is actually really good. Again, one of these things that a lot of people don't talk about. So if we go to sample accurate information, you could turn this off and it will help with CPU processing. And this might be a good idea if you're just doing some scratch demos. The only problem is that this is a preference setting, meaning it's going to affect every session from here on out forever. And so if you forget and then you're actually working on the main track, you can see how this could be problematic. And so we're just going to leave it on here. Let's find out the do's and the don'ts and the whys and the hows. Determines which parameters, if any, are automated with sample accuracy. This type of automation is very processor intensive, right? So there, you already know. It's going to affect your CPU. If you've been looking for a secondary solution, right? You've already tried bouncing, you've tried freezing, you've tried buffer size. This could help you. It places high overheads on system resources, which may affect performance depending on the nature of your projects and available computing power. This is most likely to happen during heavy project sessions where a lot of software instruments and effects are in use. Logic Pro offers 3 settings. Off. Automation is less precise when this setting is active. This may or may not be important to you, right? If you're not the primary writer of your group and you're just generating demos, who cares how accurately it's being processed? Because it doesn't matter, right? You're just showing them kind of the song, and then maybe your band or your writers or what have you are going to do all the lifting for you. So it just depends. Just depends on where you are in the pendulum. If you're writing your own stuff, you should definitely have this on. Let's keep on here. You can turn on sample accurate automation for just the volume, just the pan, just the sends. Only these parameters are automated with sample accuracy. Now, to take that a step further, we'll include those 3 and we will add to the bunch plugin parameters. All of these parameters are automated with sample accuracy. Not all audio unit plugins can be automated in this way. It's interesting, saying not all of the plugins can do this. I wonder what the criteria is, if this is a kind of format or protocol that companies must follow. Pretty interesting. But if I had to just bet and pick something, I would do this personally, because I want it to sound the best. I want it to have the best fighting chance. Okay, right below that, we have automatic bus assignment. You can see that right here. One of the best things that ever happened to Logic, in my opinion. So what does this mean? When you select Drum Machine Designer, a patch, you're not just selecting one track. You're selecting several tracks, oftentimes with several effects. Let me prove my point. Track number 1 here on the left-hand side. Then I created a software instrument. That's track number 2. After that, I decided to create a drummer. That's track number 3. Whoa, how did we go from 3 to 29? That's because track number 3 is an extensive patch. It includes several tracks, right? You can see it's built upon this track stack, and there's several effects, and there's 2 buses, bus 133 and 132. So far as that I can see, there may be other ones. It doesn't seem like it. So why is this useful? Why are we talking about it? Well, you got to think about this. Let's say, hold on. I'm just trying to figure out a really quick way of, hold on. How do I get this to the top? There's got to be, hold on. No. Okay. Don't do that. Trying to get it to track number 3 just really quickly without having to click like that. I have to think about that. It's got to be a way, though. Always looking for an edge. Okay, so rather than creating all of these effects and starting all that processing at bus 1, if you've done this enough times, you know that this can be very confusing, because now you're trying to use and utilize all of your effects, right? Everything that you have set up for yourself. And it's hard to look for all this in the weeds. What do I mean? Well, if I go to bus 129, see how in the preferences on the right-hand side, it says automatic bus assignments uses buses above what? 128. That means at the beginning of bus 129, I now start to utilize any heavy patches, anything that requires more than one track, right? Any heavy patches. And so bus 129 is assigned respectively to the drummer. And you can see that bus 132 holds various effects. So does 133, so does 134 and 135. So now that processing is happening above bus 128. I am no longer bamboozled, for a lack of a better phrase, by anything, in the first couple of buses. So from bus 1 to bus 32, I'm in the clear. Visually, this all makes sense to me. I'm clear about what's going on. I go back over bus 130, you can see that these are also taking up buses. And so this is all happening above 128. You could choose above bus 96, 164. I tend to use a fair amount of buses, so this makes sense in my head. I like the fact that it's far away from home, and so it just depends on how you want to do this, but that's what that's for. Software monitoring, what is this? Well, depending on if you're using a third-party software, hardware, you might need to monitor outside of Logic. So if you're a universal audio user, you most certainly have to monitor outside of Logic. Not always, but most of the time. And there are reasons why you would monitor inside or outside of the program. But when software monitoring is on, the audio signal is processed via the software, meaning Logic. And a certain amount of audible delay, referred to as latency, is inevitable. So some of the benefits of not monitoring inside of your DAW, if you have the option, by the way, if you're just in the box, if you just have a laptop or just a desktop, you don't have this option, right? Because you don't have a third-party interface or software that gives you the capability of monitoring outside of the system. So if you're listening to the recorded signal through your mixing console, third-party software, or your audio interface supports hardware monitoring, you should turn this option off. So it just depends on your setup. Most of us just that are just in the box, this is just going to be on, okay? Because your software, in this case Logic Pro, is monitoring everything. Now, for those of you that have Logic Pro and you're strictly in the box, you will have more latency than other individuals that have a third-party software or monitor solution. Why? Because they're using DSP resources, CPU resources that are not dependent on the computer, right? They're outside of the system, and they are now doing some of the brunt work. They're doing some of the lifting. And so it's taking away some of the responsibility, some of the processing that's happening inside of your computer. So you can see how that's advantageous. Some of the disadvantages, of course, are the learning curves, sometimes a bit of a pain. But if you're in the right system, you have the right mentor, you have the right people around you, you should be good. If you have any questions for us, hit us up. Eddie Gray here at your service, reading the Logic User Guide. Input monitoring only for the focus track. This is when we start talking about monitoring inside of Logic. You're going to want to pay attention. You're going to want to take notes. This is going to limit input monitoring only for the focus track. Same behavior you will find inside of GarageBand. When this is enabled, you only hear the incoming audio during playback or recording for the selected track and for additional record-enabled tracks. So this is interesting because you're only hearing it during playback or recording. You're not going to hear it when it's just in stalemate, when it's just chilling, right? So this is good to know, right? Interesting to think about. Do I want this feature? I may want to actually play the riff a little bit And I actually want to test this out now. So take a picture of this. All right. This is what I use, but I never, because I always use, monitor my audio outside of Logic with UAD console. This is something I haven't necessarily thought about. So again, to better serve all the people that I consult, companies, all the people over at hfmusicacademy.com, want to make sure that we stay on top of these things. So let's carry on here. There's another option, secondary option. It says independent monitoring level for record-enabled channel strips. What does this mean? Allows the use of an independent monitoring level for record-enabled audio channel strips. All right, tell it to me in English. Let's go. This is off by default. After record enabling a track, you can adjust the fader to the level you like. The original level is restored when you deselect the record enable button. Okay, I understand. So let me highlight this. Actually, let me finish reading this. The adjustments to the fader do not affect the recording level. They only affect the monitoring level. Okay, why is this necessary? I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, anybody in the comments hit me up. I never claimed that I'm some master here, right? I'm a student just like you. Just refining my game every single day, and I'm working on being the very best that I can be. All right, so with, as mentioned, I don't really use software monitoring because I monitor outside the program, but if I input monitor just the focus track, in fact, I don't want to do this while we're here, just because of feedback. I may set up a mic or something, but we'll see. But independent monitoring is basically helping you prevent feedback. That's kind of the name of the game here. So if I go ahead and create a track here, okay, and let me go ahead and extend the slider. I'll hit E. Let me go ahead and adjust my screen a little bit so that we're looking at this in the best way possible. And so you can see this is record enabled, right? So if I adjust the level of this, again, this has nothing to do with the input. It's just a monitoring solution. And then if I disable recording, then basically it goes back to its original playback volume. So record enabling it just prevents feedback, because if you have a microphone close to your speakers or maybe you forget, it's basically just providing you a backup plan so that you don't mess up your ears. I never really thought about it that much, but it seems absolutely essential at this moment. Just in case. I've never really had, at least not the last couple of years, problems with recording and playback. But hey, why not? If it's a preventative measure, why not? The benefit for input monitoring the focus track is if you guys have recorded a bunch of audio, you know that, in fact, hold on. Yeah, this is not even on. Let me just enable this. So right now, I'm going to hit the apply button. You won't hear me for 1 second because Logic is going to recognize the input device. So just give me 1 sec. Okay. So now my inputs are set. You can see the input monitor button here. Bear in mind, we didn't see that a second ago. That's simply because my input device wasn't on. And so Logic is not able to monitor something that isn't there, right? You need to enable the proper input device, in this case, my universal audio. And so now, going back to my point, if you don't have this enabled, what ends up happening is you can actually input from different sources. So I'm not going to do this live. I want to take care of my ears here. But track number 1, track 52 will simultaneously be playing back. Now, this is great if you're doing a live recording and your musicians are all hearing themselves in real time. Excuse me. But if you are just trying to record one guitar, this can be problematic because it's coming out of different channels with different processing. You can see this could be a nightmare. So that right there will save you. I do want to spend a little bit more time with it because I need to hear this effect. I'm going to have to tackle this a little bit later. So in fact, let me just go ahead and do that. Okay. Just sending myself some reminders here. All right, the dim level slider. So this is pretty sweet. You can determine a dim level for the master track. If I hit the key command X and I go into the mixer, inside of the all mixer tab, in fact, let me close this down for 1 second. So Shift X. I go to the far right, you'll see a master track. Why is there two? Not sure. If I go to the tracks mixer, which is here in the middle, you'll see the master. You'll see stereo out. The stereo out is the most important track, if you will. This is where all of the tracks are being routed to, right? Output, output, output. And so then the master track has a dim level, and that response can be determined inside of the preferences. And so then if I hit dim, although you're not seeing anything visually happening, it certainly is being reduced, in this case by 20 decibels. So if you're mixing a song and you need a little bit of objectivity, this is probably the best way to do it. So I'll press play. All right, good. And so you can see how everything is now being played back at a lower volume. Let's look at plugin latency. We talked about latency, delay, crackles, and pops. So what is plugin latency? Compensates for audio delays that can be introduced when using plugs. Plugin latency compensation, also called plugin delay compensation. That's good to know. I didn't realize there was another name. Is useful for software effects plugins. All right, so it's letting you know, hey, this is great for MIDI stuff. Okay, particularly important for DSP, digital signal processing. Accelerator hardware, such as products by Universal Audio and others. Fantastic. This is good, right? It's letting us know how and when this is helping. What are the scenarios, right? So for DSP and accelerator hardware, use the pop-up menu to activate plugin latency. This is good for audio and software. Of course, we could use plugins on audio tracks, right? We're not necessarily using the sound to emit, like a Omnisphere or Silent or something like that. But still, we're benefiting from both. And then it says all audio instrument auxiliary and output channel strips. So buses, I mean, this is going to help all around. Okay. You can also turn off compensation entirely. Oh, there's no example. Okay, cool. Well, again, if you're having issues with playback, you have a bunch of plugins. It's never a bad idea to turn this. I mean, if you don't need it and you're doing all of your processing outside, then yeah, turn it off. But for most of us, you can see I have mine set to all because I use just a lot of plugins and I just want to be covered in general. I will say that low latency mode is something else that you can access. Did they not talk about this? Oh, okay, got it. So it's coming up. So let's go over low latency mode and then we'll go over playback. It looks like playback pre-roll has been, oh no, here it is right here. Wow. Okay, there's a recording pre-roll as well. Okay, so let's go over low latency mode really quick. When you enable low latency mode by either checking this box or enabling the low latency mode button in the control bar, right? If I hit this, look at what happens up on the control bar. See that orange icon lighting up? The limit slider determines the maximum amount of allowable plugin delay. In low latency mode, audio is routed around latency-induced plugins to ensure that all delays across the entire signal flow of the current track remain under the limit slider value. This is useful when you want to play a software instrument with several latency-inducing plugins. Okay, so let's highlight that. You ever get to a point and you just need another solution? This is what you're going to want to use. It's not something that you should leave on the entire session, but maybe you're at the end of the line and you're still using 5 instances of Omnisphere. You use this just to make sure everything is sounding the way it needs to sound. Then you would perhaps freeze or bounce to audio and then carry on. Okay, let's do the playback pre-roll. What is this about? When this is selected, all play commands start playback a little earlier. The exact pre-roll value depends on the current plugin delay compensation. Of course, this option ensures that transients that fall exactly on the start position are played back correctly. This is great. If this option is unselected, transients that fall precisely on the start position can be missed. So obviously this is something that you should enable if you want your playback to be true. For example, if I started play bar 7 here, I'm going to hit shift spacebar to play from selection. Right, we heard that first kick. And I believe that kick came from here. No, here rather. Right, so the topper is coming from here, and then the kick and snare are coming from here. If I turn this off, well, it's sounding good, but theoretically, I mean, this is a very light track, right? There's not a lot of processing, so I believe this helps within that. I think that's good. All right, let's go to sampler. I should quickly say that all of this is new because of the latest updates to 10.5, 10.6. The new bad boy in town is sampler, and basically it's overtaken the EXS24. Goodbye to the EXS24. And there's a lot of decisions that can be made inside of this tab here. Let's see if there's anything relevant to your workflow. Here we go. You can configure the way in which the sampler instrument searches for audio samples, stores audio samples, uses virtual memory, and more. The sampler preferences window contains 2 tabs: miscellaneous, virtual memory. The miscellaneous tab contains the following preferences. Okay, so let's move over to this section here. Sampler. I wonder if I should pull up a sampler just in case. Why not? All right. Guess I'll have these side by side. By the way, the sounds in Quick Sampler and here are absolutely incredible. If you've ever taken the time, whoever did all this work, phenomenal job. Seriously. Really remarkable. Okay, let's see here. All right. So the storage, how is this being handled? How does sampler handle the bit depth of samples? How is it processing? The original loads samples into RAM. These are converted to the internal 32-bit floating point of the host application. Okay, and what's my other option here? 32-bit float. Samples are stored and loaded as 32-bit float files, which removes the need for real-time format conversions. Sampler handles 32-bit float samples more efficiently and can play back more voices simultaneously. So why have one and why have the other? Okay, thank you very much. This is going to require twice as much as RAM and a third more for 24-bit samples. Okay, so you can see why you would probably select original, because it's going to process them first and then convert to 32-bit. So I have never done tests on this research. I have no data for you, but just based on what we're looking at here, you should probably keep this on original unless your workflow requires a lot of sampling and this is kind of what you do, then you obviously have a vented interest. Search samples on pop-up menu, determining the location that sampler searches for instrument samples. So when it does look for samples, where is it looking? Right? Local volumes, external, all volumes. Never really thought about that before. So if this is set to local, your sampler is going to search storage media attached to or installed in the computer. Okay, if you use external, it's going to search over a network for samples. Does this mean like another computer? I'm curious, that'd be cool to know about. All volumes, both internal and network media for samples. Choosing external volumes or all volumes may increase the time it takes sampler to find or load sampler. In all fairness, I don't use sampler a lot, so I don't understand the importance of this, but I'm sure if this is something you do, this is absolutely a pivotal time right now. So I hope this helps. Read root key. So when you do read it, how is it going to read it? It looks like you have some options here. Root key at the file name position. and then keep common samples in memory when switching projects. Okay, so let's read a little bit about this. Says here, oh, and by the way, I didn't realize this pertained both to sampler and quick sampler, so that's good to know. Determines the root key of audio files when loading using optimized. Okay, see, this is something else, right? Because now it's like, we know this is not happening when we're not using optimized. I'll give you an example. If I grab this, drag it in here, I have the option of loading chromatically or using optimized. So when I do use optimized, we are kind of going to utilize one of these processes or analyses. So which one and how do they work and why, right? So most of us just leave this stuff on by default and it all just works gratefully. Thank you to all the great engineering. But still, it's good to see. Maybe something else will be a better fit. Sampler and quick sampler first attempt to read the root key from the header when loading the sample. If no root key information exists, then the audio samples are analyzed to determine the root key from the longest note detected. If no pitch is detected, right? What if it's a snare? C3 is automatically assigned to the zone as the root key. I actually kind of like that. Is that what I'm set to? Yeah, that's great. So option number 2. Okay. I'm just kind of looking over this. Read the root key when loading the sample into a zone. If the file name does not contain the information, you know how sometimes samples include, the key, the range. That does happen from time to time. So that could be good, but what if it doesn't, right? And the audio samples are analyzed to determine the root key from the longest note detected. Okay, so basically, if you're going to, use a construction kit and all the information is on there, this may not be a bad option for you because it's a quicker and sure way to find the appropriate key. See here, it's trying to read the root key from the header of the metadata, right? Whereas here, it's looking at the file name inside of, and also, by the way, for these two options, is also trying to analyze the root key from the longest note detected, right? So let's say you have a nice sustained electric keyboard part. It's trying to listen, make an intelligent decision on the root of the key. File name only. Sampler and quick sampler attempted to read the root key from the file name only. If it doesn't find the information in the file name, guess what? C3 is automatically assigned to the zone as the root key. All right, when it comes to file only, what happens here? Does it just look at the metadata? It does. And if it doesn't find anything, then it's going to C3. So this is interesting. Now that I'm starting to think about it, I don't know if I need it to analyze the audio. Right? And now also depends on how, like if you don't know anything about music and, C2 means nothing to you, then you might as well not use these first two. Because even if your files do have that necessary information for some, it wouldn't even pertain to you. So yeah, this is great. I love it. Analysis only. What's this about? We're only going to detect the root of the key from the longest note detected. See, and this is pertinent if you just have a bunch of random audio samples laying around that are harmonic or melodic, that they have the potential to be analyzed, if you will, because it doesn't matter if a snare is in C or D or whatever, right? So anyway, all good stuff. After thinking about it, I think I will the root key from the metadata. I'm starting to think that I'm probably going to use something else, to be honest. In fact, just for kicks, while we're here, I don't need the file name. I'm pretty sure I want either file and analysis. Is there? Oh, okay, so that would be that guy. Yeah, okay, cool. I'll keep that for now. But yeah, fascinating. I don't use it I don't use sampler that much. I do use quick sampler quite a bit, but this has got me thinking now. what is this here? Root key at file name position pop-up menu. Okay, so that's down here, folks. 1 through 30. We also have an automatic feature. So let's read a little bit here. Provides a smart analysis of numbers and keys from the file name. Sampler can recognize a number in the file name regardless of its format. 60 and 060 are both valid. Okay, so basically with some files, there's going to be information and it will know the key, right? A key number is also a valid possibility for this use. So if you do have samples with the key or the file name format, so I didn't even know there was a file name format. So I'm thinking about this because in music we have 8 keys and then there's sharps and flats. So I don't know if this is thinking about sharps and double flats and all that, but anyway, I'm gonna leave mine on auto, but there's some stuff there for y'all. Numeric value, you can set the numeric position, which sampler uses to find the root key. This is useful when a file name uses multiple numbers. So you see, I rarely see this. I know that these exist, but I don't see them that much. So not only is it giving you the tempo, the BPM 100, but it's telling you the 60th position. In this case is E6. Oh, so I guess it's going over range, not not necessarily just the key, but also the range where it sits. When you know the position of the number representing the root key, you can set a numerical value to read the root key at position 8 of the file name. Okay, cool. What is all this? The previous instrument pop-up menu. I guess it might go into virtual memory now. Oh, they may have gotten rid of a couple of options. I don't see any of this stuff unless numeric value. Yeah, this may be 10.5. I would need to look at Edgar Rothermick's books to corroborate this, but I do believe these are no longer in existence. All right, let's move to the active checkbox. This is now virtual memory. All right, let's see what's going on here. Turns on or off the virtual memory feature in Sampler. With virtual memory on, only the initial attacks of samples are loaded into RAM, only the initial attacks. The rest of the sample streams in real time from the hard drive. If your computer has enough physical RAM to hold all samples for a project, you can improve performance by deselecting the active checkbox. That's an important phrase. So if you have a lot of RAM, you can probably get a better response time from deselecting this. In projects with lots of audio tracks playing and relatively few sampler instances, this may affect your performance. If the active checkbox is, remember, because these samples are being pulled from wherever it is that they're located. If the active checkbox is deselected and there is insufficient RAM to hold all samples, sampler swaps data to and from the disk, which degrades performance. So a lot to think about here. I guess it really depends on how much you use sampler. Deselecting the active checkbox also increases project load times. Oops, that's yeah. And I think also, in all fairness, something to think about is if you're a performer, right? Because when you're a performer, you need things to really work in real time. And so, right, you probably do not mind if you have a longer load time if you're performing a set and you need everything to work exactly the way you want it to, right? So something to consider. See, page 1009, buffer range pop-up menu. Okay, give me a sec. Let's see, where is that? Buffer, oh wait, virtual. Okay, something else to consider here is, again, low when recording, high when mixing. In this case, I'm not recording anything, so I'm not necessarily concerned. And I know that is affecting the way that my computer is accessing and playing back this information. So that's something there to consider as well. Determines the size of the buffer used for processing audio samples. Small is the best, but it does require more work on your computer. So if you're not using it, or you're using it in an insignificant way, you might want to have it set to large. And by the way, I'm not expecting all of you to change this every single time. If you're a beginner, please just leave most of this stuff alone. I'm just trying to speak to kind of certain individuals at certain times. So this may be relevant to you in a year, right? This may be something that you need right now at this very moment that makes massive difference. So if you're not sure, just wait for a bit. Just take notes. Make sure you know how to access those notes, and then kind of go from there. All right, what is this one? Host disk activity. All right, less, average, extensive. How does this affect the system? This is going to optimize sampler by indicating how much recording and streaming of non-sampler related audio is occurring. Less. If your project consists mostly of software instruments with perhaps a recorded instrument or vocal, set your disk activity to less. This is definitely the case for me, so I'm going to set this to less. If your project involves recording a small number of tracks at a time and possibly playing back a dozen or so audio tracks and some software instruments, set your host to average. So you've recorded a couple tracks, you're using a dozen to be specific, audio and software instrument tracks, then average. I find myself mostly using software and audio tracks, and I don't really record a lot of tracks at a time. I record one thing and then I burn it to audio. If I use FlexTime, I burn it to audio. If I use Melodyne, I burn it to audio. It's always, condensing it down. Extensive. If you're recording an entire drum kit using over a dozen microphones, streaming, recording choirs, set your host disk to extensive. Now, what does this have to do with sampler? That's all I have to say. Are we recording all of this into sampler? I don't think so. Yeah, that's worthy of looking into, but we must carry on. The show must go on. Requires constant RAM allocation of field. What's going on here? Okay, yeah, it's just letting you know. Look at that. Actually, this went down. I didn't notice that. Hold on. Average. Cool. Roger that. Thank you for that. Let me see. Does this affect it too? Hey, look at that. If I set this to small, I'm barely using anything up. Cool. All right. Shows memory requirements of the parameter settings above. The slower your hard drive and the higher your hard disk recording activity, the more RAM you may need to allocate to virtual memory. If you need to apply more, change the amount and click the apply, right? Disk IO traffic field. You see that? All right, right at the bottom, we got some numbers here. Got some numbers. What do we got? Show sampler read write disk load. If this exceeds your hard drive's throughput capacity, you may hear audio glitches. Okay, cool. So if you're having problems, you know where to go. Not read from disk in time field shows the number of all audio files in sampler that's enabled to read in time. If audio cannot be read, you may hear audio glitches. Cool. All right. I know what to do. Let's go to editing. This is awesome. This right here, I wish somebody had taken the time to let me know about this when I first started. Now, most people think this is just for quick swipe comping for take folders. And when you create those necessary take folders, when you are actually making your selection in the background, it's actually using this criteria here. It's saying, hey, when we crossfade, right, when we take comp, what is the definitive crossfade value? That's being determined here. But why I like it, my good friends, is because if I hit the key command, Option Command F, which is set by user, not by default, I am accessing my default crossfade time. Did you see that? So again, let me show you the key command. Apply. 1 second. Apply default crossgrade. So this no longer only applies to creating comps, take folders. Now I can actually utilize it when I want to, when I have two adjoining regions. And then on top of that, when you merge audio, as you know, up here in the drag menu, we can actually crossfade audio so that when we do align it next to one itself, in fact, let me try this here. When I do align it, there is a default cross fade value that could be determined right here. All right, don't sleep on it. Scrubbing, it's a whole nother part of the program. This is something that I know is derived from the days of tape and all that good stuff, and I honor it, much respect. I just do not see the application. I really don't. I've tried using it. I try to understand, but I guess it's because I work with my eyes. I'm not saying I'm right, but when I look at transients, I can tell, okay, that's the snare and that's, the kick and what have you. So I much prefer using, this kind of thing. But there are individuals that do like scrubbing audio. So let's figure out how potentially we can use it for our usages. When selected, you can scrub audio in the tracks area using the scissor or the solo tool, and that's good. I suppose if you do want to get into it, and by the way, if you don't enable this, you're not going to be able to hear it. But if I do select the scissor tool, right, as I click, hold, and drag, I can listen to all the various parts in this specific region. See, I just get confused about the whole bit because I'm not exactly sure what's going on. It sounds cool. I like the kind of, horror sounds, sound effects, but it just doesn't work for me. Again, you can access the solo tool as well. I don't want the scissor tool. I want the solo tool. Maybe this is a little bit better, but listen to this. Yeah. I just don't see it, guys. If you guys have something for me, please. I've been trying to understand the usage today, not then. I understood back then. We didn't have a visual component to our sequencer, and now we do. And so where does this come into play? Is it just a tool that kind of fills a certain need for a certain end user? Just not sure when we would use it. And you can set the reaction time, and maybe that's part of it. Maybe because I just have it set to normal, and maybe I need to have this set to double and faster. I don't know. I really don't. I've been trying to understand this for a while, to be honest. Let me see if I can try this. Does this change the experience? Yeah, I mean, all I hear is noise. That's basically my experience. It's just all I hear is just a bunch of noise. But that's really more due to lack of experience. I really feel that because, it just depends on how you work. It just depends on how you learn. So, all right, let's continue on here. In fact, we'll take a quick break. All right, my good friends, finish off here. Sensei Eddie Gray at your service. We've been doing this for weeks on end, and man, I'm like, before I was looking at it like I was going up a mountain, and now I realize that we've ascended, right? Looking at the lay of the land, and now it's time to go home. And so we're going to take this home. We're covering preferences, project settings. We're covering key commands, control surfaces, controller assignments, as I remember, and then we are done. Wanted to thank you if you have made it this far, which I know a ton of people are. I've been getting a lot of great feedback about the program. I really, really thank you for the opportunity. It has been a true pleasure and privilege. Let's finish strong. Let's keep our eyes on the prize, and let's do it. All right. Let's see here. Let's bring us in. Good. All right. It's here. Hold on. Geez. Good. Okay. All right, we're looking at I/O assignments. The audio output preferences let you set the physical out pair on which the stereo output is played. So if you're using surround, this is going to kind of come into play. I don't as of now, so it doesn't really pertain to me. But of course, if you have various speakers and you want to kind of route everything definitively, you can also set your output 1 and 2 to differ. In fact, let me just do one more thing here. Okay, good. Do this. for whatever reason, you can see that I don't even have all those surround settings, and that's because in my advanced icon here, I just decided to leave them out, right? I'm not using score, I'm not using surround. So to me, in my head, there's, something always costs, right? And so if I'm not using it, I want to leave it out. And when we go back into IO assignments, I don't have any of those options available. But something you can do is change the output, and there are various reasons for that. I will, if you're interested in that, there is another video, there is another blog, so go ahead and check that out. Let's carry on here. Bounce extension. When we create, and actually something that we should say, if you're going to mirror your outputs, your primary outputs, let's say you have another room or something like that, you can choose that. You could deselect to have the output signal routed to the chosen output pair. Select the checkbox to have the output signal routed to the chosen output pair, as well as to the physical output. So there may be a reason why you want the same signal coming into your studio and then another room, or I don't know if you have a recording room or something like that, and that's where you would address that. So you don't have to have a separate output is what I'm saying. You can have output 1 and 2, and then you can have another set of speakers outputting somewhere else for various reasons. So there's all the surround options. What is bounce extensions all about? Well, it says here, when audio bounce extensions preferences lets you set the bounce extension and the surround format. The bounce extensions pane consists of the following preferences. So for me, I'm working in stereo where we have left and right. I don't know if this applies to interleaved files. Yeah, when you're bouncing in a split format. So this sets the bounce extension for each audio file when bouncing in a split format. You can change the extension by typing in the text field. So if I go into Command B, the bounce project dialog window, is that what it's called? File, bounce, project dialog window. You can see here when I go to file type, right, it says interleaved, and you can actually split this. And so let me enable this, and we can split this. And if I did this, the extension, the file format would be, in this case, left and right. So for me, it works. I don't really use that a lot, but I know it's there, and I've taught a lot of other people how to utilize it. And then with my input, I have nothing here, and I'm not sure why. I think this is a surround thing as well. Yeah, so surround, guys. It's not what I do. Cool. Should we just finish off? Let me see how much more we got here. Yeah, I'm gonna finish. Okay. There is a couple of different checkboxes here. Predominantly warning before processing function by key command. What does that mean? Provides a warning before carrying out a destructive edit in the audio file editor. I think that's good. Let's leave that on. What about this one? Clear undo history when you're closing a project. It deletes the undo history when you close a project. I would not recommend that. Simply because, let's say you made a mistake right before, you're working on a session, you're about to go to bed, you're kind of sleepy. You want to make sure you keep that undo history. That can be found under edit undo history. So yeah, I'm going to leave that off. Record selection changes in undo history. What does that mean? If you want to be able to undo and redo selection changes in the audio file editor. Well, sure. If I'm making any change, I want to undo it. And remember that your, see if I could navigate us properly here. The undo steps can be determined right here. Now, if you need more wiggle room, please choose a higher value, right? 100. I feel like with 50, I seem to be pretty good, but you never know. So I think 100 is on by default. I could be wrong about that. Record normalize operations in undo history. What does that mean? Man, it's language sometimes. Record normalize operations in undo history. So like if you want to be able to undo and redo normalize functions. Well, yeah. I mean, what if you choose normalize and then it doesn't work out? No, we're leaving that on. Hold on. If You want to be able to undo and redo. Yes, of course I want to be able to undo and redo. What's number of undo steps slider? Number of undo steps. This is not a slider, but anyway. Determines the maximum number of undo steps that are retained. That's interesting because I thought I had 50 or 100 in some cases that are retained where, right? I guess something that I will look at really quick. Oh, but this is specifically for the file editor. I'm sorry. Okay, see, that wasn't something that I put together. So this all has to do with the audio file editor. And it's hard because it just says file editor. And to me, I think of it like the audio file editor. So most of us, if I hit the key command E, it has nothing to do with the track editor. We're just talking about destructive actions. By destructive, I mean if you make the change, it's going to make it to the file itself, like literally danger, danger, right? So so in that case, I may want to clear undo history when it comes to the audio file editor, if that's how it's working, because that's all now I'm under the assumption that that's how it's working. Okay. Now I want to record selection changes and undo history. Well, sure, just in case. But even then, if it's destructive, what does it matter? This needs way more explanation, I personally think. I don't use the audio file editor a lot, just a quick disclaimer. I like to kind of keep my options open. I think it's the best way to operate personally. But of course, if there's a click or pop, then yeah, you should fix that definitively. But yeah, number of undo steps, I'm good there. Let's go to, oh, and if you have an external sample editor, you can see I've assigned Isotope RX8, and so that works in my favor. And so if you have something, you might want to assign it. I also highly recommend a great little program that I just discovered. What's it called again? Give me one sec. It's down here somewhere. I use it to edit audio files. Like if there's a click or a pop. Can't remember the name of it. Now I have to look for it. Hold on one sec. It's called, was it Fission, Mission, something like that? Let me extend this. Fission, Fission, by a great company called Rogue Amoeba. Check them out. Really, really nice software. If you need an external editor, of course, the best of the best, the deepest of the bunch. Not that you need it, but if you're into audio forensics, then you should certainly check out Isotope RX8 Audio Editor. But really, it could be overkill. It could be, using a hammer to, do something simple like, push in a thumbtack or something. So just be careful. Okay, I think we are home free. MP3. Oh, this is cool because, we spent some time on this. I don't remember when that was. And we determined that the highest quality that you can achieve in bitrate mono was 96. It was in this series, by the way. We got this information from the user guide. And we determined that the highest bitrate that we can hear and listen to when utilizing variable bitrate was 92. Of course, you want the highest quality here, so on and so forth. So, yeah, we did this work at some point. I do not remember when it was. I think it was when we were looking at bouncing projects. That may have been it. And you can see the settings are reflected. And so I made the changes. Wait, and actually, I want to see something. If I make the changes here, are they? Yeah, okay. So these settings are directly reflected here. And let's try this out. Like, for example, I'll change that 96 and I'll change that to 320. And let's see what happens, yeah? All right, cool. So you can see where all this is stemming from, yeah? All right, so 96. All right, good. So anyway, we already did this work. If you want to read more about it, you can. But see, it says in bitrate, it says if you can afford to increase file size, you should choose 96 and 192. These settings deliver better audio quality. You can choose even higher, but the quality in bit rates above these is minimal, right? And so this is just the standard that I'm following. By the way, I'm not saying this is the truth. If you want to do your own research and if you feel strongly otherwise, I ask you to go ahead and do the work, right? We are not saying that we know the truth. Our aim here is to help empower modern creatives all over the world and to make sure that you learn how to stand on your own 2 feet, learn how to mix and master, learn your DAW, and to learn how to monetize your music, right? If we have those three components, you are a force to be reckoned with. So with that being said, this is Eddie Gray signing off. Just wishing you the best day ever. Don't take it for granted. This could be the very last one. So let's crush it. Let's keep our mind in a good place, keep our hearts in the right place. And I'll catch you guys tomorrow for recording preferences. We out. Let's go.